Would you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For a roll call, we have all 5 board members present. We have Dr. Lucero, Ms. Weiser, Ms. Shumway, Ms. Young, and myself, Roger Jacks. Takes us to item 4, call to the audience. The board will listen to any comment from the public, but will not respond except as permitted by Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.01. The board may refer the item to the administration or request to have it placed on a future agenda. And the first one I have is Jesse Figueroa. We have a microphone for you. You have to speak up, Jesse, to be able to hear.
My class coughs a lot, so I'm thinking of telling everyone to wear masks because they cough. And then when we first did quarantine for 2 weeks, they're all coughing, doing hard coughing, and some of them were kind of like doing stuff like that. And then I wanted everyone to wear masks because there's no one the whole classroom except for the teacher wears masks. The whole classroom wears masks and the only one who wears masks in the classroom is Lily. So that's my share.
Thank you for your comments, Jesse. Thank you very much. The next speaker we have is Gail Figueroa.
That's me. I don't need a microphone. I'm loud.
It's for the web.
I'll start with 3-2. 3-2 means 3 voted against masking, social distancing, and protecting our youth. I want to go to Desert Willow School, of which my kiddo was enrolled. In his classroom, the whole class except one child was infected. But the COVID dashboard for Kingman Unified said 3 staff members, 6 students, Desert Willow, 3 staff members, 6 students. They closed the whole class down. We were supposed to go back to school after 1 week. 2 weeks out of school. There is no social distancing. 3-2. He came home, and my companion, who has cancer, died last Friday, COVID, because he brought COVID home from the school. The only transportation he has is on an unsanitized bus to a school. And thank you, Mr. Bett. I will compliment him and the assistant principal because they do take temperatures at the door. However, you have 1 child infected and it extrapolates 3 to 5 to 10. And the kids take it home. It affects vulnerable adults. And our dear governor now says, well, maybe we should mask. Gee whiz, are they gonna end up shutting the schools down? I have no fear about expressing myself to each and every one of you, masked and unmasked. This COVID is real. People died. My companion died. We tested him. He had COVID. He had COVID. The kids in his class had COVID. The teacher had COVID. It's not a little thing, but three people who sit in a high tower voted against any type of protections. And I realize in a week, they may or may not vaccinate children. However, parents don't think it's real. Parents don't care. They send their kids to school coughing, sick. You don't have to have a temperature with COVID, but you can carry it. And we have families with vulnerable adults in the home. So I wanted to bring it to the attention of the school board because I think you guys need to take a harder look at what's going on. And I looked at the dashboard. It's not only Desert Willow, but a lot of the schools here have COVID cases. And oh, they say, well, it's only 1%. It started in Wuhan with patient 1, and now it's all over the world. So with that, I rest my case. I've said what I needed to say. My grandson came with me, whom I'm raising, and he said, I want to talk. This little boy wanted to express himself because he cares about his fellow students. And I'm not just advocating for my kiddo, I'm advocating for every child in the school system that can bring COVID home to a vulnerable adult, to a family member. And until one of you have someone close to you die and watch them struggle for breath, maybe it won't affect you, or maybe it will. So thank you for letting me express myself, and you all have a blessed meeting.
Thank you for your comments.
I have to go because I have to meet on the schedule.
Next item is Mr. Ron Bear.
President, board members. I'm here today to ask the simple question because of the new OSHA requirements that by January 4th, everybody that has work-related employment of more than 100 people have the COVID vaccine. We have, previous to this, said we're not going to worry about it, and now we are in a situation where that requirement comes right after our Christmas break, which puts us right now at just over 3 weeks, 4 weeks of school left. And I'm sure the school has an idea of who has or has not had their shot yet. But up to now, the policy has been we do not say one way or the other to our kids or anybody else. The OSHA requirement requires the district to put the cost of time off. We can't even cover subs when we're sick. You're talking the district has to cover the time off for the people to recover from the shot, recover from the ailments of the shot. So you're talking you could be out for 2 or more weeks with this, not once, but twice because of the 2-time testing shot. So where are we going to find subs if we assume that half the district is vaccinated for 200 plus staff members in our classrooms when we can't even cover 8 subs in this school building right now? You're in a jam and it's coming quick. I realize it's been stayed, but this is something the district has got to start looking at, has to start doing it now. We can't wait till Christmas break and tell teachers, oh yeah, by the way, before you come back, you got to go get your shot. That's not the time to concern ourselves. The time is now. whether we're gonna be laying off the teachers, telling them they can't, having them have time off, all those things need to be considered right now. Because you only have one board meeting between now and that time period. So if there's no plan, which I'm gonna gather, probably hasn't been since this has been required, it just came out 2 days ago, Friday. For the firm date, that we have decisions that have to be made and plans that have to be done to account for this. Like I said, it's something you need to look at. I don't know whether you are or not. That's not my concern. My concern is the fact that in my classroom, if I need to be sick, I need to know I have a sub. Not that we're losing people that are having to recover because of mandates that are coming down to us that we can't handle. And 200 teachers would be something, there's no way the school district for an amount of time. Let alone the shot has to be done on your time, not the teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Next call of the public is Bethany Weigel.
Board members, my name is Bethany Weigel. Not only did I attend school here from kindergarten to graduation, I have been an employee for 21 years. Both my parents worked for the district for over 20 years each. I have come to think of KUSD as a family, but now that family is breaking up. I remember when we unified. I remember when we took care of our own. Now we are throwing those family members to the wolves. It started with our cafeteria crew. Now they want to do the same for grounds, maintenance, and custodial. Many who have worked in our district for 10, 20 years or even more. Who's next? The IT department? Why not our parents? Maybe the office staff? When will our teachers be outsourced? Remember, we have to outsource because we can't find enough workers. Look around. We don't have enough teachers either. I got my 32nd student today, and I'm probably going to get another one Monday. Look at businesses. They have to close early or not even open at all. They don't get to outsource. We need to come together for a solution, not just throw away our valuable coworkers. I wonder why we have such a hard time filling positions. Could it be how we treat people? Please take into account how these specific people feel at this time. Who is the outsourcing actually helping, them or the district office? My daughter will lose insurance if my husband changes companies. He has already sacrificed so much for our family. He has no control over the situation. He is the hardest, most dedicated worker, and what does he get for that? There's no loyalty anymore. More than just the people in this room feel this way. I was asked by many of my coworkers to share their concerns. This affects more than the people that do.
Thank you, Ms. Weigel. Jack Weigel.
Hello, my name is Jack Weigel, and I've worked for the Kingman Unified School District for 17 years. In that time, I have filled many of the positions others have not wanted. 2 years ago, my position in the kitchen was contracted to Chartwell, and I was unable to accept being sold to an outside company and transitioned into grounds. In the time that I have worked for grounds, I've watched as loyal employees were driven away or chose retirement because of the working conditions provided by Chartwell. I am not a piece of equipment to be traded. The act of using SSC is not a solution, but a conditional surrender. Chartwell did nothing commendable to fix the kitchen budget. The reason the kitchen is doing better is because the pandemic pushed our community into the poverty level, allowing free lunches for all students. On top of that, the pandemic provided COVID funding. If we hope to save our school system, it will be from innovation and not from allowing us to be slowly eroded away. In closing, I would like to say, beyond my opinion of Chartwell or the move to SSC, my wife and I both are full-time employees of the school district and have dual enrollment insurance. That includes my daughter. Moving to another company would force us back into seeking 3 different insurance policies, costing us hundreds more each month.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. Is that Powers? Next speaker is it Powers? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, board members, for hearing out today. And from the research I've done on this, on SSC, the ratings are really low. And I researched through Indeed, and over 200 reviews. Out of the 200 reviews, management was the worst of all. And the next problems they had was benefits and pay. And now with the benefits, you talk about all these dedicated employees on grounds and and custodian who have dedicated their time and their life to doing a good job for the district. And I myself, I take pride in my school, and have some private company come in and maybe micromanage what I do and everybody else what they do, and not a good idea. Not to mention the loss of the state retirement that we get from the district. These guys are going to pay for state retirements, and the guys like Jack here has been here for 17 years, and his wife's been here for 21, and they just get scratched and lose all their retirement. That's not very good. And the benefits, I need that for my disability. I can't go out and just get any insurance company. I rely on what benefits that you all have to give us from a disability, because I can't afford, to pay for it out of pocket. Like we would be required. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. That's all the slips I have. Is there anyone else that wishes to do a call to the audience, to the board? Okay, we will move on then. Item 5, reports. Superintendent, none today. We have any board members that have a report for this evening? Okay, hearing none, we move on to item 6, approval of routine orders of business.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve by Ms. Weiser. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, we have a second reading of change in policies from ASBA Policy Service Advisory.
Mr. Vice President, members of the board, this is the second reading of the policies we discussed last month that basically surrounds the revision or the removal of ARS 15-71702 that the Supreme Court found to be unconstitutional based on the budget hearings. And so has to do with face coverings and masks, removing the language that a district may not require a mask or vaccine, and also removing the language that regarding blaming or judgment based on race, ethnicity, or sex as defined under the 7 concepts. Those are all languages that are being removed, and you're reading it for the second time.
Okay. Do I have a motion then to approve policy number 712, 713, 714, and 715?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ms. And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carries. Moving on to item 8, approve revision of the 2021-2022 middle school and high school counselor employment contracts.
Mr. President, members of the board, over the last several months, even up to a year, the district has been in conversations with counselors and we launched a research project into their salaries. What we found out is that elementary counselors sign contracts to work 148 days, while our middle school and high school counselors sign 162-day contracts. However, there's no difference in compensation there. So as a district administrative team, we're proposing that we right size those calendars for that. And the way I did it is I brought everybody back to 148 days, calculated a daily rate for all of our middle school and high school counselors. And then I applied that daily rate to the days to bring them from 148 to 162. In your board packet, I provided you a list of their new contracted amounts. With approval, we would get to work on that tomorrow, new contracts, new salaries, and we would make it retroactive to the beginning of the year. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions by any of the board members? Okay, hearing none, looking for a motion on item number 8.
I'll make a motion to approve.
The motion by Ms. Weiser for approval. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second. Shumway.
Second by Ms. Shumway. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 9, approve 2022 memorandum of understanding between KUSD and MCSO for the service of the prisoner transport bus.
Mr. President, members of the board, we are asking for permission to enter into an agreement with MCSO, Mojave County Sheriff's Office, to, I'm sorry, what's the word? To service their prisoner transport bus. This could be on an annual basis. It could also be on an as-needed basis if anything comes up. I provided you a list of charges for each type of service we would provide in our garage. And so that's what I bring forth, and I'll answer any questions.
Do any of the board members have questions on item number 9?
I would like to clarify, who the drivers will be.
The drivers,
Mhm.
we won't be driving their
Okay.
prisoner transport buses. They would bring them to us and then pick them up as well.
Okay.
Any other board member comments? Okay, looking for a motion on item number 9.
I'll make that motion. This is Shumway.
Have a motion by Ms. Shumway. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Young. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 10, consider transitioning facilities, maintenance, and custodial staff over to SSC, a facilities management company, using the One Gpa contract 20-01 PV-09.
Mr. President, members of the board, I have a rather lengthy presentation here. Most of it would be just so we have it on the public record. So I won't say every single word contained. I will stop anytime you ask and either clarify something or answer one of your questions. Also, we have 3 representatives from SSC here with us this evening. So any questions you have for the company potentially can be answered by them as well. Okay, is there any requests before I jump into this on how you'd like me to handle?
Well, that sounds sufficient. Let's do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, how did we get here? Exploration of contract services for KUSD facilities has been a topic of discussion at the administrative level for several years, especially when you consider the success of Chartwell's. We struggle to retain facility staff from the management level to the custodial level, despite consistent increases in compensation during the same time frame. We struggle to implement new facility strategies because of that turnover. When our last manager resigned, we were already in conversations to fill our COVID custodial needs with a third-party company, so it made sense to bridge into full-service discussions. Who is SSC? SSC is an on-site facility management company. That means that if the board were to approve this contract, they are on site with us. This is not a management from a satellite office. This is a management at the ground level in our district, similar to our relationship with Keith Fiedler with Chartwells. They work directly with administration, directly with employees, directly with principals that just happen to be from a different company than KUSD. SSC is an awarded provider through the procurement cooperative One GPA. This means we don't have to go into a formal bid process, but as you'll see later in the presentation, I still showed you some comparisons of the other companies that bidded against them in this One GPA. And also I brought up some references from 4 different school districts. SSC offers full service on-site management at the direction of district administration. I'm sorry I said that. SSC specializes in efficiency and accountability and is backed by an extensive network of support that is not currently available in SSC. That I think will really come out when you look at the references and what they had to say. SSC services continued. Similar to the district's relationship with Chartwells, an agreement with SSC means the district gets on-site management. Again, there are specialization offerings under SSC that aren't currently at our district right now. Carpenter, locksmith, this was all in their proposal for the services they would like to provide, as well as additional management offerings. Instead of one director over all of them, they have several layers of management from the top down to the level of the workers.
Can I stop you there?
Go ahead.
So can you tell me from your perspective why these items you just listed are better?
When you're just talking about their services in general?
Yeah, the having specialization
Okay.
versus billing for an outside company,
Mhm.
right? Having the layers of management, all that.
Okay, we'll start with layers of management first. It's this really interesting, intriguing idea of that every one of the facilities workers under SSC, 95% of their time will be accounted for. And the work that's accounted for in that time will also go through quality assurance on a regular basis. And so you'll have working managers, as I understand it, those who can help do the work, but also manage on site. And then managers over them who continually go behind the work, check on the quality assurance, and make sure that that 95% of time is always accounted for. That type of service level simply doesn't exist at our district.
So that would mean that we would hire more people in order to get that, correct?
Yes, but under their proposal, the way they hire those people, you'll see when I get to the financials, comes out in a wash with what we actually spend as a district. So you're getting these extra layers, but you're not necessarily spending any more than what you're spending as a district currently on this current structure.
Okay, can I ask for some input from the company representatives on this?
Of course.
I still am wondering how this works better. I understand quality control, but you still have to be able to hire those people, and the people working in their regular jobs being supervised in a way that they're not used to. How does that make this better? You know, there's always employee issues that come up.
It's just a matter of having systems in place to where, as people go out every day to do their jobs, whether they're carpenters, locksmiths, whatever, they already know where they're going. They already have the tools, supplies, materials that they need to do the job. And then we have subject matter experts and people that come in and train to make sure they're doing things properly. And then, of course, as Mr. Sherman said, we check behind the QA program. So it's just a matter of a system that's been put in place, training to make sure that people are ready to do the job, giving them supplies and the tools, equipment every day to go out and be efficient, and then checking these.
Okay, I'm still curious how you're going to work the personalities. How are you going to address the changes in what the people are considering oppression on their heads because they have another supervisor?
It's just a matter of being able to communicate with the employees. Let them know we're not here to take anybody's job.
Mhm.
We're here to give them additional training. We're here to give them additional equipment they might not have right now, or supplies, or whatever it takes to get the job done. I realize it's a new phase potentially, but at the end of the day, we just want them to be successful. We want your kids to have a great environment to learn in.
Right.
And that takes all three services to get that done.
So when these people who are going to be this additional layer of management, are they coming from outside the community or are they going to be hired within?
I mean, if we're bringing in subject matter experts, they're from outside the community, but the goal is to try and find some management within the community or from a nearby community that understands Kingman and state.
Okay, because I mean, I think Kingman in general is having a hard time hiring, period.
Sure.
And I know it's a phenomenon that's happening all over the place. So if you don't already have these people in place, you know, that travel, then this could still become a difficulty for everybody involved.
It could, but we also have a start of a transition team that comes in before day one of the contract, and they'll stay as long as needed to make sure that things are up and running the right way. If that means staying and working to help get it done, that's what they do.
Okay. Okay, thank you for addressing that, and for not just for me, but for everybody else that's listening. Thank you.
Well, a follow-on question, if I may, with SSC. And that would be, one of the concerns our employees have is over the years, we've had a difficult time trying to hire qualified workers or just workers in general. And so the follow-on question is given your experience as a company, how do you go about doing that when it's been difficult for the district itself to do it? How does SSC turn around and get the job done?
In a couple of different ways. One is we have a dedicated recruiting arm. We have individuals in our company that all they do all day long is recruit from different resources, whether it be social media, whether it be local businesses, whatever it is. And they're able to bring our managers qualified candidates to talk to and interview. The other thing is we do recruiting bonuses, retention bonuses. We have different retention programs. We want the employees to understand that we really care about their overall well-being as individuals, as well as employees to do the job day in and day out.
Okay, thank you.
Just question, do you want me to take a different approach to this? If you have the need to ask questions and get ahead, like we could do that, right? I don't want to waste
No,
time.
I'd say just continue what you're doing.
Okay.
And if a question pops up by the board, we'll just take it at that
Okay.
time.
Okay. You go to the next services, please, Travis. So that first top talks about the accountability and tracking system, 95%. Already discussed the management structure. I'm just going to move on past this because we've kind of just talked about it. Employee transition. Should the board approve the contract, transition meetings would start immediately with current district employees as well as with administrative teams. The goal with approval would be to go live January 1 while using the rest in November and December for transition efforts. Each employee who transition over will retain their current rate of pay with the district. Most employee locations would stay the same as well, but we can expect some changes in that area based on discussions between KUSD and SSC. It's a different structure. We can't say it doesn't look, it's not an apples to apples comparison. So we don't know if there are going to be some shifting of placement. SSC offers benefit plans, 401k options, and other employee incentives only a private business could offer, such as a first year 35% 401k match to the employees that come over. So we met with employees, I guess it's been 2 weeks now, maybe a week, and they voiced some transition concerns. We had 2 meetings and some concerns came up across all of them. So one of the main things is ASRS. So with ASRS, your best bet as an employee always is to have direct conversations or communication with ASRS and how your specific retirement plan looks, because really everybody is different in these systems. But what we do know, you can retire from ASRS if you're eligible. You can take a reduced early retirement if you're age 50 and have at least 5 years of service, or you can retire if you have actually reached the eligibility with full pension benefits. That includes the district's part and their part. You can take a refund of your account and withdraw your funds in cash with applicable taxes and penalties. Members are also eligible to roll over their funds to a tax qualified 401k, similar to what I've just brought up. And members are eligible to receive all or some of the district contributions depending on their individual scenarios in that case. And employees can leave their funds in the retirement system. And when they get to a retirement age, they can pull it at that for that full benefit at whatever there was. So if you are an employee who's maybe halfway through your working career, you can stop ASRS, leave it in there, start your 401k, build that to your retirement, and then both of those benefits go together when you retire, a ASRS benefit and a 401k benefit. Under no scenario do employees simply just lose their money. Okay. Continued employee transition concerns. There are some employees that have concerns related to SSC and Chartwells being under the same umbrella. A claim was made that only 2 district employees are left in food service who made the original transition. In fact, there are 17 food service employees who made the original transition and are still with our district. Food service has 60 employees, so nearly a third are from the original crop who transitioned over. We lost people during the pandemic. We closed shop and people didn't come back. We have also had some people who've been terminated. We have also had people who've retired. So the reasons for turnover are substantial and vary among each employee. So in the 3 years leading up to the food service transition, the district experienced a turnover rate of 44% within its food service department. So just for context, prior to us even going to Chartwells, we were dealing with substantial turnover in the department, regardless of what we did as a district. Another claim or another ask was that district custodial staff feels cut off from district food service staff now that they have moved into Chartwells. This is understandable. Food service is on an island. They are here to serve meals to our students using federal money and using cash that is delivered straight into their pockets. They are on island by nature. There should be limited conversations between a food service employee and a custodial employee, especially during the workday. That essentially is a cross-contamination concern. There are a multitude of concerns. However, a custodial situation doesn't look the same. Custodial is not on an island. Custodial is part of our district. That relationship would have to stay the same for us to maintain any sort of semblance of success. Like, they're going to be working in our facilities. They're going to still be with our kids, our principals, our teachers, the whole group. They would just be getting paid from a different company. Again, employee transition concerns. Employees have voiced that this proposal makes them feel thrown away or cornered. The district understands the emotional side of this prospect. However, administration does not agree that employees are being tossed aside with consideration of this contract, as they would still work in our schools, be relied on to keep our buildings safe and clean, and retain the relationships they've made in their time with us. In many ways, the district sees this as an opportunity for our current employees. As discussed, SSC proposes substantial structure, stability, and support that simply isn't offered currently at KUSD, from the daily training to the ability to get an item in your hands when you need to make a fix. Transition concerns continued. We believe as an administrative team that some of the concerns voiced may actually be solved under the SSC model. Employees have said training is lacking across all facilities staff. SSC trains every aspect of the job, from proper ladder use to identifying hazards and everything in between. Employees said supplies and equipment are often very difficult to get their hands on. SSC proposes to catalog all our equipment, a promise that our last 3 managers have made to to our district that has not come true, and supplies, and then focus on building the district up to meet its needs. Though the district has a tracking system for equipment, SSC promises to take it to the next level of efficiency, tracking, location, age, replacement time, etc. That's how you get on top of your items and you ensure that you're not purchasing surprise equipment and you're always on a rotating schedule. Also, the management layers proposed by SSC should increase the efficiency that staff get those very supplies and equipment they request and often wait months to receive. In our short time as the interim facilities managers, I've gotten multiple requests for items that were asked for up to 3 months ago and promised. Once transitioned, SSC's proposed organizational chart gives these employees much more oversight, support, and face-to-face support and interaction than what the district currently offers. You touched on that, Beth, about the fact they're going to have additional supervisors over them. Many times supervisors are mentors, at least in my case. And I think that you can flip that and look at it as a benefit to have someone to turn to, have someone to throw ideas at, have someone who actually understands how all of it works, helping them along their way. SSC will work directly with employees on all aspects of their new job: compensation, benefits, incentives, job roles and responsibility, placement, proper communication, safety training, etc. So the district learned that during the first 90 days under SSC, they would be going without benefits. Here is an item that the district asked the board to consider. We would like to cover the Cobra coverage for those employees during that 90 days of transition. We cannot legally pay for their benefits as they currently are, but we could cover their Cobra insurance as they're essentially in between that coverage period. So we can make them whole during that time on the district's dime.
Have you calculated what that would be?
What was that?
Have you calculated what that would be?
It'd be the same as what I'm paying now.
Really?
Well, right. We cover their insurance already.
Right, but Cobra is usually way more expensive.
It's a small amount of employees. I don't have a dollar amount for you, but I'm not concerned that it's going to create any overage in my budget. And also it's a 90-day period.
Okay.
If the contract is approved, employees that do not want to make the transition will have the opportunity to apply for open positions in the district. For employees that do transition, the district proposes paying employees eligible for sick leave payouts in January rather than July. So that's a board policy, sick leave payouts. It's approved to pay out in July. District administration asked that we move that to January just for this slate of employees and only when they're eligible for the payout. So now that's 2 items I've asked for approval on that would change the way we do things that you've already approved. Vacation hours would be paid out. That's no different than any other employee who works for the district and accrues vacation leave. Personal time, as per the employee handbook, would not be paid out. We'll move to the financial perspective. On the left side, you see the FTEs proposed by SSC and the cost. On the right side, you see the current district FTEs and our current costs / benefits. Okay. So I've only done this for half the year because that's what we're moving into January. So what you'll see in this bottom right column, this 600,000, that's cash or budget capacity the district will retain, that we will still have as needs arise, because we have to be able to still address anything that happens within our district. Otherwise, what you'll see is that currently we got 2.1 budgeted and they're coming in at 2.4. So that's the financials of that, is a $300,000 increase in costs, but you see that we retain the 600,000 in capital. So 300,000 in our positive side.
How is it? Break that down a little bit more for me, if you don't mind.
Okay,
How
so
is it that we're retaining the capital?
they only addressed operations and the budgets associated with those things. And so they said, this is what we'll need to do all of those things. Then they didn't touch our capital budget. They just looked in comparisons with our M&O expenses. I know that within that 600,000, things could come up that the district would have to deal with. Also within that 2.4, there's going to be things the district has to deal with. And so by retaining that money, we keep 600, but we're paying 300,000 more to have them. So the net is 300,000, which could still be spent on facilities, which would always be the plan for it anyway. I guess maybe a better way to show you that would be currently $2.7 million budget, okay, for facilities. They're proposing 2.4 for the remainder of the year. But I know some of that excess cash could still be needed for
Mhm.
items of issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say that in what they're saying for the 2.4, they're still gonna be talking about some equipment needed, so
Yep.
they're
You-
covering some of that capital that we would be spending anyway.
That's within that. Yes, you
Yeah.
see some of that within that. I want to reserve some for any sort of emergencies. And if the board is to approve, then the real discussions on those types of items would start between the district and SSC in the same way they work with Chartwells. Saying Chartwells doesn't get to point out a need, make the purchase, and then bill the district for it. Chartwells gets to point out a need, propose a solution to me, work with me to find a budget, get approval, and then we move forward. It all still goes by the same way we get any sort of item approved for purchase. Proposal, discussion, and then decision. Anything on financials? Okay. This next slide is a comparison of One Gpa Scoring. So you'll see on you'll basically at that bottom, you'll see 2475 is their total score. Their next closest was 2205 at that Somerset. But then if you look up, you'll see that SSC beats Somerset on personnel costs and beats them across the board, but you really notice it in the personnel costs specifically. I just bring this to show you that this is what they had to go through to be selected as a preferred provider through One GPA.
So I'm curious if they're doing so well with personnel costs, and please feel free to answer instead of relying on Aaron. What's your pay rate? What would employees expect to get paid? Address those concerns.
So
Well, first, any employee that transitions over retains their pay that they have with the district. So
Okay.
if you're asking what they're going to be paid, you're asking about employees that are not hired yet. And just want that to be clear.
and that was the goal, was to make sure everyone got the same rate of pay, if not better, depending on if they wanted to get trained on doing different jobs. The other thing is we looked at the benefits and we made sure we married up a benefit plan that we had that was very similar to what they get for the district right now. So the gentleman that spoke earlier was concerned about having to get a different insurance plan. I really don't think that'll be the case. And when our HR people come in, if you approve this, we want to make sure we can marry up a plan that he has currently with what we have. Again, keeping the employees whole, keeping them here, and allowing them to maybe do a little better with more supplies or equipment. That's the goal here, so that the teachers and students have the right place to apply. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
I actually have a follow-up question with that, and I'd like more specifics. I'm looking at your proposal book. This was provided to board members prior to this meeting. This is Jen Shumway, by the way. And I'm looking at page 36. This is your proposed staffing chart. You have 3 different categories: custodial, grounds, maintenance. In each category, it says how many you would have of each. How does that compare to our current staffing? Can you answer that, Aaron?
I think we'd want to go back to the previous slide because that's where I compared it.
Yes, please.
Are you seeing that? So I lined up the book with what, after a discussion we had about the book, and then lined it up with what we're doing. So those FTEs should match up very closely to the book because it's the same proposal.
Okay, so I see day porters here on this page 36.
I'm not
Where
looking
is
at the
that?
book.
Yeah, I can answer it.
Please go ahead.
Sure. So a day porter is someone that works during the day. They help maintain the cafeteria, common areas, the bathrooms. And I don't know what the breakdown on your staffing is per building. All I know is that we have 13 more custodians than we currently have because we realize you're understaffed across the board. So some schools may be right on the number, some may be less than the number. And so our staffing model is more custodians and actually more overall grounds maintenance people, and then of course more management. Once we get into each school, we can see what there is currently and see where we either need to beef it up or where it stays the same. Answer your question?
Yes, I appreciate that. And as far as rate of pay, we have been, I think, chasing the minimum wage as it continues to rise. And I think we had proposed or even approved a pay raise above that. So when you say that we're going to keep our current staff where it's at, how are we going to recruit additional people at minimum wage? If we are offering higher than minimum wage currently and we still can't seem to staff it ourselves.
Well, our proposed pay rate right now is higher than the minimum wage, even to what it's going up to January of 22. And then we just do a wage analysis, a market wage analysis for this area, and we see what the going rate is, and then that's what we look to recruit around. If we need to end up paying a little bit more, then that's what we're gonna have to do. But we try to do some data analytics, and then we also obviously take in the minimum wage rate into mind as well.
And as far as management, and I believe you used the term lead, lawn crew lead, what is the percentage of management to, for example, labor in your proposal? So percentage, the people kind of orchestrating versus the people doing the work.
It looks like there's 5 management positions out of a total of 80.
We normally try to keep it a manager for no more than 19 to 20 FTEs.
And then,
A little less than that here.
and can that be adjusted as you see a need?
I mean, yes, it could be, but we've been doing this for a long time, and this is kind of the model that's been most efficient in the K-12 world. All we do is the education marketplace. So every program we have is based around your K-12 staff. But yeah, I mean, if we see that something needs to be adjusted, we'll obviously make those adjustments.
And can you describe to me what an athletic lead would do?
That's someone that takes care of your athletic fields from a grounds perspective, works with your athletic directors on painting or striping of your fields before games, works on irrigation, works on different things that may need to be improved with your sod or your pest management or whatever. So that's what that person's dedicated for.
And have we as a district decided that this is a needed role? Is this a role we already have?
There is a board member Shumway, there is a similar role to that now at the secondary levels. They have dedicated grounds crews with an additional person compared to the elementary levels. And one of those people is often the person who prepares the fields. So it's not outside of the realm of what we already do. But in this case, and they transition it a little bit more. And then maybe one, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, SSC representatives, one might do all 4 of the secondaries and really just focus on that, and then leave the other grounds people the opportunity to work on the grounds facilities in general.
And you've talked about retention bonuses and hiring bonuses if needed. Will those costs be passed on to the district in a following contract at a later date? Or how is that additional bonus taken care of through our contract?
That's just our cost of doing business. It's just like if employees have to work overtime, we don't charge you extra for that. We just have to pay them their overtime rate to do that. It's the cost of doing business. It's something that we found over the last 18 months to be very effective to recruit and retain employees.
So this isn't something that you've had to do in the past. That sure, we've had a hard time filling positions, so we had to offer bonuses. So that's why your contract has gone up the following year.
I mean, we've done some small programs like this in the past in certain areas of the country, but not as a general rule of thumb the way we have the last 20 months or so.
I do know that we are having a difficult time hiring people generally in this area, in this country. So I anticipate there's going to be a problem. Hiring a new company is not going to change that problem. So I don't see that as the fix. I don't see this proposal as the fix to our hiring problem. I do want to ask, as again, I was looking through your proposal book and I saw that our management team, this is page 37, consists of 2 directors and 3 sales people. Is there a reason the sales is 3/5 of our team?
That's part of the team that has been working with Mr. Sherman and Dr. Gretchen throughout this process. You actually have an RDO who's with us tonight. You have 2 custodial managers. You have a facilities manager, and then you have a grounds lead that oversees the grounds program. So what we showed there was more of a corporate level for you. And then what we showed in there's an actual kind of an org chart that was on the next page, I believe. It really shows more of what our management is dedicated to Kingman Unified.
Okay, a couple more questions. I'm sorry, but I've been writing them down as you speak. Equipment that is needed, that is our equipment that we purchase, is that correct?
That's the equipment that we buy upfront to make sure that everything in the program runs efficiently. Now, part of the startup process is we'll look at what pieces you currently have, and if they're usable, we can buy those off of you and put those onto our books and make sure that they are maintained and cared for throughout their life. But the idea when we propose this is a zero-sum based game to where we put everything in that's needed to run the program efficiently from day one. And just going back to your recruitment thing, that's the other thing about the startup piece is if we were to be approved tonight, we'd start recruiting tomorrow. And we would take, we'd have a management meeting next week with employees. We'd start, talking to them right away so that everyone understands what the roles are going to be, what the expectations are, so that when we started in January, we would be ready to hit the ground running.
I understand. Thank you so much. So going back to the equipment question, any equipment purchase, does that belong to KUSC?
It will after the 5 years. We depreciate out everything over 5 years. That's how the pricing of the program works. So it's ours up front. We maintain it. We repair it if it's broken. And after 5 years, it will technically become Kingman's if they want it.
So one of the concerns with our current employees is, or one of the things I've heard is that, hey, we can do a good job if we had the proper equipment, if we had the right tools, if the tools that we had worked. So this, I don't see this as a fix necessarily, because again, this should not be our workers concerned. KUSC should be addressing this ourselves. We don't need to hire an outside company to make sure that our staff, our custodians, our ground crew are working with proper equipment and doing it safely. So I don't think we should hire an outside team specifically to address that concern. The other thing I have a question, and I think this is the last one on, nope, not the last one. Can you speak to the diversity of your corporation, percentage females that are in top management roles in your company, percentage of minorities? Can you speak to that?
Sure. So on our management team at the corporate level, we have a division vice president, both our K-12 and higher ed that are African-American. Our director of HR is a female. And then we have just a culture of change that we're trying to boost the diversity and inclusion across all of our management, as well as our site supervision. The Compass Group is recognized annually for the diversity programs by Forbes, and that's just a model that we've taken to increase not only our diversity, our inclusion, and our female management as well.
And that is something you're going to take with you as you continue to hire for our district, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the last question I have has to do with medical benefits. What is the reason that you are delaying medical benefits to your new hires, that 90-day grace period? What is the purpose of that?
That's just the company policy and part of the enrollment, getting them up and running, making sure that everything's in place. That's just something that it's been a company policy. I've been here almost 30 years. It's always been that way.
Board member Shumway, even our district has up to 60-day period of time when a new hire has to wait to be enrolled into benefits.
Yeah, that I am aware, but 90 days seems a bit much, especially since we're in the middle of a pandemic. And Cobra, I believe, as far as taking on Cobra, that is more expensive for the employee. So employees who took on this job had a certain expectation of their benefits, and then that would be turned on their head kind of all of a sudden. So that is something to consider for our current employees as they transition.
We proposed covering that cost. We proposed covering that employee cost several slides back. The district doesn't pay for Cobra. That becomes an employee cost. The district is saying they will pay those premiums during that 90-day switchover.
So is that additional cost? I'm sorry, I'm looking at your financial perspective here with the.
No, I did not add that into the additional costs related to the maintenance financial perspective. It was a concern that was brought up after I was done with the presentation, or at least to the end of it.
That additional cost can be provided to us later?
Yeah, definitely. Just like any additional cost.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question?
Yes.
Well, it seems like we're always chasing private industry when we're trying to set salaries and we're trying to give pay increases and so forth. So I'm wondering, and they may have addressed this already, but where do our employees stand as far as their salary or hourly rate goes compared to other districts in our area that they have serviced? Because it seems like if they're just going to maintain their current hourly pay rates and salaries, that it must be right on. Are we below? Are we above that average? I think one of the advantages of moving to a private industry is a possible pay increase or better pay.
Unfortunately, I didn't measure that type of cost. If I understand your question correctly, you're saying how much are we paying our employees in comparison to other districts that have a third-party provider?
No, what I'm asking, and it may be a question for the gentleman, is that where does our district stand when they looked at our current salaries? Where does our district stand compared to other districts that they service? Are we below those averages? Are we above those averages? Are we right on? And that's why everyone is maintaining their same salary or hourly rate.
Yeah, you're right in the middle for the state of Arizona. We have 7 other districts in the state, and these wages fall right in the middle. Some districts are higher, some are lower. So, it's a pretty median rate right there.
And do you see any opportunities that when we sign this contract that there could be pay increases for employees?
Potentially. I mean, anytime we come into a partnership, we want to look to improve the programs and find efficiencies. Sometimes, the staffing level we have, it might actually be a little high, but we are not sure until we actually get in and get started. Obviously, if the staffing level is high, then we'll be able to pay a little bit more to the existing employees that are going to stay on in transition.
Okay. And my other question, Aaron, was what is the relationship between Dr. Dorner or who will be meeting with SSC? Is it on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, as needed, daily? What does that look like?
At a minimum, it would be on a weekly basis, but in our district, it's as needed as well. I meet with Keith from Chartwell's regularly, but he also meets with Gretchen and Jerry, transportation, facilities, anyone in our district when the need arises. But that main point of contact would be shared between Gretchen and myself, Superintendent Dorner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I did some reference interviews. Would you like me to go through each of these questions? Give you
Yes.
any? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so the first person we interviewed was Dale Ponder, the CFO for Crane Schools. He also provided a reference letter. Our main question for every person we interviewed was, how was the transition? You see that Mr. Ponder says it was smooth. They accommodated their requests, but the impacted staff members received written communication as well as the opportunity to meet with SSC once the selection was made. The potential disruption in the school's culture was a concern for the district, the schools, and the governing board, but that Mr. Ponder did not feel the school communities have lost any of that through the transition. We asked him about what would he change if he had to do it again. He said there were no real significant challenges. The SS team is thorough and consistent, and they're always trying to meet his expectations. Even today, he said, I feel that we made the best choice for our district, and SSC has done a phenomenal job of not only meeting, but also exceeding expectations. He said he would make the same decision today that he made before. So he initiated their partnership in March. So he's only been with them for a short period of time. They had other discussions with contracted providers, and they found that they needed a larger pool of employees to be cost effective. And we have found that out before. Companies won't even do business with you if you don't meet a certain threshold. So they had something related to the threshold, and it looks like they were able to rework that and work with SSC to solve that issue. How are things going now? He said things are great from his perspective. Some skeptical principals who weren't sure how it would work and have since shared that they aren't sure why we didn't do this a number of years ago. He talks about the program is still in its infancy, but they're feeling very pleased with their decision. Retaining employees. This was an interesting for all of the people who were interviewed, right? So overall, yep. But we'll just read it. They had a couple of professional related issues from SSC employees in which they were promptly handled by the SSC management and have been successful in being able to attract and retain employees for these positions. To the best of Mr. Ponder's knowledge, they have fully staffed the positions allocated to them. We have a blended program in which our lead custodian and a day custodian are still district employees, and the evening custodians, as well as some floaters, are staffed by SSC. He says the structure was mostly done to appease principals who felt that they may be losing bodies to help with crowd management when passing periods, as well as student and parent assemblies. Over time, they expect to move everybody to SSC through attrition. His reference letter was next. Mr. Nethercutt, the director of facilities for Kyrene, also responded to our interview request. He said it was a rough transition from what they were doing to SSC, but he said SSC stayed diligent in hiring until they were fully staffed. The previous vendor, so they were under third party prior to SSC, took all of their employees to another account when they left. SSC went several weeks short-staffed with custodians, but were diligent with updating the district as their hiring progressed and brought out managers from other parts of their company to fill in until fully hired. And it's a bit about that structure and support that we may not have in Kingman. What would Mr. Nethercutt change about the transition if he had to do it again? He said he would have started hiring soon to ensure they had enough staff to start the school year, but that was a money concern. They've been with SSC for 6 years, maybe 10 years total. So it looks like there was a third party in between. So they had SSC, got a different company, and then they're back with SSC for the last 6 years. On deciding to make a switch, he talked about the previous vendor, ABM. ABM is actually a vendor the district had been in conversations with. They did not provide a professional level of service, and the district constantly had to intervene in the custodial process to make sure they were meeting their contracted obligations. Kyrene has worked with SSC previously, and they did a great job in providing custodial support for the district. Plus, they provided the lowest cost for these services compared to other vendors when going through the procurement process. How are things now? Mr. Nethercutt says SSC is very responsive. During COVID, they went above and beyond when disinfecting schools and completely flexed around all of the mitigation strategies the district implemented. They also have a scorecard process where they receive feedback on their custodial services from each of the 25 schools in this district. If it's an A or B, everything's good. If it's lower than B, then SSC meets with employees and the team at that school. So it's back to that quality assurance, but not just from the company, from an actual person paying for it, that they see that quality assurance in action. Have they been able to retain employees? Mr. Nethercutt said they struggle just like everybody struggles. They pay their employees minimum wage. Not sure if that's completely accurate, which makes it hard to find reliable and committed employees for that much money. However, they have good connections into that community, so they are able to find workers. Overall, they are contracted to provide Kyrene about 85 full-time employees, and they are currently short 8, around 10% vacancy. Okay, so before I go to these board options, I was able to get a couple of more interviews done. I spoke to Mr. Kuhn at Flagstaff. I think he is the superintendent. He may be their facilities director. He said the transition was smooth. SSC hired most of the employees from the previous employer and brought in a transition team. He said he would have had the transition stay longer for training. They've been with SSC for 5 years. They did a contract before that, so 8 years of being under contracted services. They made that ultimate decision because of retirement savings and hiring issues. And currently they have a good relationship with SSC and are in year 5 and ready to go out for RFP again. The last year and a half with COVID, they struggled to keep our schools 100% staffed. They have tried several options to hire a full staff. They have offered bonuses and tried team cleaning. So it looks like staffing continues to be an issue even at that school. And then I spoke to Mr. Joe Howard, the superintendent of Prescott schools. He said the first few days of the transition were rough, but he made one phone call and 3 people flew out across the country and replaced the lead that had been hired. Then it was very smooth from that aspect on. He says that's his favorite part, is that the ability to correct an issue in an immediate time frame. And we can speak from experience with that. We have corrected several serious issues in food service on an immediate timeline rather than the prolonged timeline that we often go through as the Kingman Unified School District. What would you change about that transition? He said, actually, the rough first few days helped me see that they meant business. So I'm glad it happened. I was also a new superintendent, so I would have had my principals more in the loop in planning. That would have made it smoother. How long have you been with SSC and what was your structure prior to that? So they've been with SSC for 6 or 7 years. They were self-op prior. So they were in a situation from us. He kind of had a nightmare scenario. He said, our head custodians were more like personal assistants to the principals, and they were duping us on work. SSC came in for less money with less people and way more efficiency. They made the switch because they realized their structure wasn't working well, and also the community was pressuring them. So there was some political issue in Prescott where the community said, enough with your self-op, you need to get a contracted provider. So we can imagine what that looked like in a board meeting or something. How is the relationship currently? If we ask for a change, they make it. He has a relationship with the boss of the area and he checks in on all the time. He never has to reach out to him. They reach out to us. They helped a ton during COVID, often at an extra cost to them, not to us. And lastly, has SSC been able to recruit and retain employees? He says, miraculously, yes. They tell me it's very hard, but they always get the job done. I don't notice when they are down employees. They actually do better hiring than our food service contractors, but it's hard all the way around for everybody. So that's the last of my interviews. And then here on board options, the school board can vote no on moving forward with this contract. That would end our discussion here. You can vote yes on the contract and we would launch into the transition. You could also table and ask for more information. So with that, that's the end of my presentation and go about it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments by any of our board members?
I do. I have one. Before I can approve this or not approve it, there's a couple of approvals that he needs from the board. One is the Cobra, and there's no action items to approve those tonight.
Carol, I would bring those 2 items back at the December meeting. Specifically.
So they don't need to be approved before we approve this contract?
You can, similar to the way we, I think, handle like a budget workshop, you can approve the contract and the conditional approval of what I laid out, but I would still need an action from the board to approve the actual expenditure I'm requesting. And at that point, I could bring back actual dollars and cents as board member Shumway asked. It should not stop from the contract though, because those are district options, not SSC options.
But they affect the contract. They affect the employees.
They do affect the employees.
So I would rather have those to be approved before I do anything on this contract.
Mr. Sherman, are you looking for tonight just a motion to move forward with the contract? The contract will not be approved until we actually sign it and vote on it. Is that correct?
No, you would be approving the contract this evening. I mean, you would still have signatures to do once we move into the actual transactional period, but we're asking for you to discuss approval on this item.
Okay, thanks.
I will say, Board Member Young, again, that the 2 items that are within my presentation are district-based things. And I know that you're saying that they are affected by affect employees, but with conditional approval, we would know that I'd have those written up and ready. If we are unable to do that and you are still looking to potentially approve this contract, it would set our transition timeline back substantially.
Well, I would prefer to table it and get those approved first because it does affect employees. I mean,
Okay.
We didn't have the figures for the Cobra. I would really like to see those.
I was curious if we couldn't do a special meeting like next week to button all this up and not do the approval tonight.
Hi, this is Shumway. I'm with you, Beth, just because from the outside looking in, this feels like, and I know I don't want to take anything away from everybody that I know has worked really hard to put this together and all the conversations that must have been taking place. But from the outside looking in, it seems like a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that we can't keep a facilities manager. I know this has got to be bigger. I know there's got to be, those tiny cuts that have been happening that are making us bleed, but those tiny cuts have not been communicated. So I think I would like to know more about what has led us to this point, beyond the fact that we can't seem to hire a qualified facilities manager.
So should I make
If-
a motion to table or?
Let's have a question. Yeah. If the final approval slipped to the December board meeting, how large of an impact does that have on I'm assuming trying to put this in place for next year or later this year?
This is-
What kind of an impact would that 1 month have?
I would still ask SSC if the same time frame was available, but if it wasn't, it would probably push us through January, which would mean we'd have to issue new contracts as we are for all classified employees. Like we're doing that with minimum wage, right? You're going to have to approve that at the next budget, at the budget meeting. So we would have to, those people in January staying on our books, they'd have to get a raise, a new contract, that whole entire thing. So that's why I would ask that we would still make the January 1, but it seems like pretty far-fetched at that point.
Can you clarify that a little better? Sorry.
In January, as I've warned the board multiple times, we have minimum wage going up again. And the way we apply that is that 30-cent increase across all of our classified employees so that we can continue to retain the separation of classifications. If we don't move to SSC until February, if you guys were to approve and we don't move to February, that means those classified employees will get new contracts and raises January 1st, commensurate with minimum wage as the rest of our classified employees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's why I was asking you to clarify it again, because if we did it January 1st and they moved to SSC, would they still get that raise?
Well, we've promised that they would retain their rate of pay. So if they move over, then we would have to keep our promise from my perspective.
I want to hear that from them.
No, not this moment. I know it's within our realm of what I pay for benefits already. I wouldn't be comfortable with it. We're not looking for help with that. It's okay.
Will our employees get their raise that we had already scheduled for January 1 when you take over on if you were to take over on January 1?
That's not what I was saying.
Well, that's why I was asking for clarification, because it sounded to me like
If
we've got a planned raise coming up in January 1.
right,
Associated with the minimum wage increase.
right.
So
Okay.
yes, I mean,
But they'd have to be on our staff. So if
And
they
so
go
I'm
to,
asking if SSC will be giving that raise if they take over January 1.
I don't have that answer.
I'm speculating at this point that would not be a problem, because I think what we've got spec'd in right now for wage rates is going to fall in line with what their increase would be based on the contract.
Okay, again, this is where I'm thinking these kind of questions need answered. If we could do this again next week with these answers, you would have answers from the CEO about Cobra costs, and we could all get a better definition of this.
And I'd like to piggyback on what Beth is asking for. I'd like to see specific salaries or hourly wages for the proposed positions that were on page 36 I referenced earlier, to compare I mean, we care, we don't, we're not just an employer in this town. This is our community, and the people we employ here are our neighbors and people we shake hands with in the grocery stores. So it's really important to us to make sure that we're handing them off compassionately, and that where they land is going to be a soft place to land, and they shouldn't feel like we're abandoning them in some way. So I think those answers do need to be, the answers need to be provided. Thank you.
Aaron, I think through your presentation, you've answered those questions. I think what we have to look at is, can they do a better job than KUSD does right now? And this is their industry, this is their profession, and I think they're going to do an excellent job for us. And they're going to want to do an excellent job for us because they want to keep their contract with us. So as far as the Cobra expenses and those, I think you've addressed all those already. So I'm comfortable with approving the contract this evening. If the other board members want to meet next week and it doesn't hurt your deadlines or anything, then I'm okay meeting next week also.
Aaron, would you be able to get everything together with a meeting in 1 week?
Absolutely. I might get clarification tomorrow morning on the exact items you guys would want exact questions on and go from there. But yes.
And Mr. Vice President, members of the board, if I may interject just for a moment.
Yes.
On the one comment about it being a knee-jerk decision, because that was brought up in one of our meetings as well. On day one, July 1 of 2019, the first thing I was asked by a board member at that time was to consider contracted services because the facilities manager at the time had left because it had been considered before. We hired a facilities manager who lasted a few months, didn't have the knowledge, scope, or experience to manage the people that we do care deeply about, have the supplies, get it done, provide the support. And we talked a lot about it during that time. After he left, we went through an entire round of interviews, could not find a facilities manager, kind of went deeper into the application file. That was all communicated. We went with the last facilities manager, who I can't say anything poorly about, but he had absolutely no experience. He didn't have the scope, frame of reference, or experience either, did his personal best. And I was told at that time, give it a year, see if it works out, and then he resigned. So it really is not knee-jerk, in my opinion. It's been discussed for years. But the bottom line is, whether you approve this or not, we still need to find somebody with the knowledge and the experience to manage it. I've been in this district for 30 years. I love every one of these employees. I don't sleep at night over this. I know the Weigels well. Your parents were my teachers. It does not sit well in my heart to have this conversation either. But the bottom line is, either way, I would love to be able to do it and dedicate my whole day to managing facilities. It's not that it's too hard, that I don't want to, that I want to dismiss them, that I don't care about that section of employees. I care so much that I want proper equipment, proper supervision. I want to be able to call somebody and say, we need a mule, because I've got an employee who's walking from the front of the building to the back of the building. He's got a trash can on a skateboard because he can't drive a mule around on the grounds. We've got an order in that's been sitting there for 6 months, but a company can get it to me in 5 minutes. And it's not about trying to pass over our employees. It's just absolutely 100% not. That's not who I am. That's not how this district runs. And it's not a decision I woke up one morning and made because I didn't want to handle it anymore. We have been talking to our employees. We've been listening to our employees, and whether they know it or believe it or not, we feel like this is the support that has to happen so that they can do their jobs well, that we can focus on the education of kids while they focus on the safe learning environments. And I know not everybody believes that, but it's an absolute fact. It is not a knee-jerk decision. I'm going to just repeat myself. It's not how I roll. It's not how the district rolls as a team. We've gone through this thoughtfully. We've had meetings with our people. We've talked about concerns. We've discussed ASRS. We've done research on it. We've talked about you know, ASRS, if you've been in it for 10 years and you leave your money there and you have a 401k and they have a 35% match in the first year and you go forward, you know, another 5 years and you hit your retirement, does the total of your ASRS that's still sitting there earning interest and the 401k combined at least equal or increase? I mean, every detail has been discussed. And I'm fine tabling it too, for the record, but I can't leave this meeting without saying to the board, the employees who are here and the people who are watching, that this is a monumental and very important decision. And whichever direction you go, if you go with the company, I hope that our employees who are still going to be our family, I mean, it's like, we're not passing people off. I love what you said, Board Member Shumway, to pass them over compassionately and make sure they have a soft place to land. I think that was the smartest comment of the whole meeting. We want that as well. And if we go that way, we'll ensure that it happens. And if it doesn't, I will be the first one to stand up and say, hang on, we're backing out. If you don't go that way, then we're going to have to come together, because if you say no next week, next month in January, we still don't have somebody with the experience and the knowledge to manage this multi-layered, multifaceted situation. So this is a big conversation, and I appreciate everybody, their input, everybody that did a call to the public and the board members' comments, but it is not something that we are treading lightly through. So thank you.
Is there a motion to table this item to a special board meeting to be conducted next week?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Weiser. Do we have a second?
I will second, but I also have a comment.
Have a second by Ms. Shumway, and go ahead with your comment.
Is it possible for this meeting to take place in the evening where we can invite SSC and our grounds crew, our employees, to be there to ask these questions that the SSC themselves can answer, and bring us all together to one table for this meeting?
I'm sure we could do that. Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. All those in
Roger.
favor? Yes.
Oh, I just had a comment on this. I just want to make sure that when we set this meeting, it's a meeting that the first priority has to be that all the board members can attend. So I don't want to put any false promises out there or guarantee that it's going to be in the evening, because the board members have to be there. So.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, and we'll take a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Shumway.
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Dr. Lucero,
No.
Ms. Weiser,
Yes.
and I say yes. So the motion carries 4-1. So we will move forward with setting up a special meeting for next week with the anticipation that all 5 board members are present for that meeting. All right, thank you. Move on to item number 11, approve donations.
Make a motion to approve the donations with our intense gratitude.
Have a motion by Ms. Weiser. Looking for a second.
A second.
Second by Ms. Shumway. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move on to item 19. Possible motion to move into executive session per Arizona revised statutes 38-431.03A1 regarding the request to be released from an FY 2021-22 employment contract by Patricia Hunter. Does the district have any comments on that particular item? What's that?
do not need to move into executive session.
Okay. Is there any board member that wishes to move into an executive session for item number 12? If not, I'd be looking for a motion for approval.
So, Mr. Vice President and members of the board, the governing board denied the request of Patricia Hunter to be released from her fiscal year 21-22 employment contract. Staff further recommends that Ms. Hunter's employment be terminated for breach of contract, and that the governing board authorize staff to assess a liquidated damages fee and report the unprofessional, and authorize staff to report the unprofessional act to Arizona Department of Education for the reasons stated in the confidential memo to the governing board.
Thank you. Okay, looking for a motion for approval on item number 12.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Ms. Shumway, looking for a second. I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion carries 4-0. That's what I heard. Okay. Item 13, we don't have to do,
We just did 14.
what's that?
We just did 14.
We can skip item 14. Moves us to item 15, which is a motion to move into executive session to discuss school board/board self-evaluations. I was going to make a recommendation that we table that item for this month and move it to the December board meeting. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that is tabled for December. And that takes care of item 16. And that moves us to item 17. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned.